Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Leading the Millennial, the Insider's Guide, presented by Emily Williams. Today's webinar will be about an hour and is sponsored by the HRDQ Team Adventure Series. This series is a fun and memorable way to demonstrate the concept of team synergy. Each simulation provides a safe, open environment in which participants can learn and practice key process skills that lead to synergy. My name is Sarah Schaefer, and I will moderate today's webinar. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions box. We will be answering these questions as they come in live at the end of the presentation or as they follow up by email. Emily Williams is a millennial on a mission. She works for one of the area's most trusted training and development firms, the Pinnacle Group. In her role, she equips organizations for leveraging in the unique talents and perspectives of the emerging professional. Welcome, Emily, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are located. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Emily Williams, and I am a millennial. I know many of you are probably very surprised that I'm on time today, as I am a millennial, but we will have plenty of time to dig into all of those fun facts. I'm from Pinnacle Group. We are a training and organization development firm. We're located in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania, for those of you familiar with the area. My current role, as Sarah mentioned, is media and training specialist. In my role at Pinnacle Group, I'm responsible for oversight of all training video production. I coordinate key aspects of design for all training products. And my favorite part about my job is I deliver training and development programs specifically targeting emerging professionals in the workplace. I'm so excited to be here speaking with you all today, and I want to keep this as interactive as possible. I know it's a webinar, but I'm really hoping that you'll participate in the conversation through some polls and chatting me with any questions you may have. So I'm really excited. Any questions you have, please feel free to chat, and hopefully we can address them. To give you some background, I grew up in a very, very business-oriented family. My mom, my dad, my aunts and uncles, they were all worked in very traditional work settings. I was fortunate enough to have many serious internships during my college career. These internships allowed me to get a first-hand account into the business world, and it really helped to point me to the career I have today as a training specialist. I was fortunate to join the Pinnacle Group team right out of college. And from the very beginning, it was clear that I was an integral part of the team from the moment I walked in the door. I never felt that they were worried about my age or my lack of experience, but were truly open to what I had to say in my opinions. When I entered the workplace, like many of my peers, I felt encouraged. I was optimistic, and I was prepared to start my career and contribute to the business world in any way I could. I knew right out of college, getting a job, that I was one of the lucky ones. And my plan was to really not let anything get in the way of my success. However, even though I felt extremely valued in my organization, I felt a large disconnect between what I learned in college and what was expected of me in the real world. At times, it was confusing and frustrating that my college education and my experiences with internships and previous jobs did not fully prepare me for the business world, for what it's like and what is expected of me. During my times of confusion and frustration, I was surrounded by a team that valued my opinion. They offered their valuable time to teach me the ins and the outs of the business world, and they really offered me constant advice and help. Within my 2 years here at Pinnacle Group, I was given the tools to flourish in my role. And now I finally feel as though I'm a full contributor to Pinnacle Group, to my clients, but really to the workplace as a whole. Unfortunately, when sharing my continued excitement with my peers, I quickly realized that many were not receiving the same support in their organizations. Even after 2 years in the workplace, when speaking with my peers from a variety of different organizations and different industries located all over, not everyone is feeling as confident in their roles. Confusion and frustration seem to be a constant for many millennials in the workplace due to their inability to really find their place and what is their role and really start to understand this better. You know, after feeling this confusion and frustration when I entered the workplace, as well as seeing many of my peers being truly underutilized, this is why I feel so passionate about this topic. And I'm so excited to talk to everybody today, hear some of your experiences, share some of mine, and really start to understand the millennials. Now, I promise not to sit here and tell you that my generation is without fault, or that the success of the millennials is the sole responsibility of others who manage them. But what I really am willing to stand by is the idea of a partnership. With the support and guidance of those managing the millennials, as well as the effort from the millennials, personal and organizational success will be achieved. And I think everybody listening, whether you're a millennial or a manager or any role you have, you know, finding that personal and organizational success for ourselves and helping others accomplish that is true success all around. Gloria Steinman, who is a journalist, she's a famous journalist, and she once said, we need to remember across generations that there is as much to learn as there is to teach. When we take a second to think about that, there is as much to learn as there is to teach. Finding success in the workplace is truly dependent on successful relationships. This is something we know. When we find this successful relationship between the past 3 generations in the workplace and the millennial, the newest generation to enter the workplace, we find real success. It's crucial for all sides to remain open-minded to the different experiences, opinions, and views that each generation is able to offer. That's why this topic is so important to the workplace today. We must remain open-minded and not just pinpointing one specific generation and calling them out, but continuing to be open-minded to really learn from them and to teach them. I, along with my Pinnacle Group team, have spent numerous hours really researching the data on the millennials, a topic that I feel so passionately about. We are one of the highest researched generations, and after we researched all of this, we compiled the data, deciphered the data, and really dug into the meaning behind it all. Today, we will look at the data and uncover its meaning to help you better understand and manage the millennial. So all of the information we're going to be looking at today is really research-based, and a lot of it is facts. I also ask you and encourage you to keep in mind that what we're going to discuss today does not define every single millennial in our generation. What we're talking about really more broadly describes the generation as a whole. This data is not meant to be used to label the millennial, but we're really looking to provide a deeper insight into this generation, how we can work better with this generation, and how integrating them into the workplace is really beneficial to all. Now, after talking about the data, let's get started by looking at some numbers. And here's the first opportunity for you to really enter into the conversation. Research shows us that by 2020, blank percent of all U.S. workers are predicted to be millennials. I'm going to ask you now to enter into the chat box a number. What percent of millennials do you think will be in the workplace by 2020? I'm going to give us a few minutes here, so I'm going to go silent for a minute as people start to put some numbers in and we can see what people think. Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for the participation. I'm seeing a ton of numbers here, which is awesome. And the numbers I'm seeing range anywhere from 90% to 7%. A lot of the numbers I'm seeing come in around 40 to 55%. The answer here is, by 2020, 46% of all U.S. workers are predicted to be millennials. 46%. So, good job to everybody who answered correctly. That data shows us that in only 5 years, almost half of the population in the workforce will be millennials. When we think of half of the workplace, that number just speaks volumes as to why we're here. Why are we talking today about millennials? Why are they so highly researched? Well, in only 5 years, they're going to make up half of the U.S. workers. So now that we looked at some of the data and we saw the real importance of millennials, let's take a look at what we're going to go over today. We're going to begin by defining the millennial. Who falls into this generation that we are going to speak so much about? Next, we are going to try and gain a deeper understanding of what drives the millennial. No matter who you're speaking about, if you can find out what really drives them, you can find out a lot about them. We then are going to learn tips for effective performance management of the millennial. For those who are managing the millennial, what do you need to know? What are some tips that you can really take away with you to use when managing the millennial? And finally, we're going to receive some more insights for intergenerational communication. Today we'll be mostly talking about millennials, but I also don't want to forget that there are 3 other generations in the workplace. So to really get started, let's take a look at who the millennials are. Millennial is the most common word that describes this generation. They are also known as Generation Y. So if you hear anybody saying the millennials or Generation Y, they are talking about the same group. The millennials or Generation Y are born between 1981 and 1999. Now, if you were to go Google right now, when were millennials born, you would find a little bit of discrepancy. When this topic, which is so researched, there seems to be a disagreement upon the years. Some say it's 1980 to 1997, and they just range just a little bit. For today, and for what we're going to be speaking about, we are going to use 1981 to 1999. And these are the most agreed upon dates to define when the millennial was born. So again, trying to keep this interactive, I'm going to pass the question off to you. What words would you use to describe the millennial? And I'm going to ask you to really throw anything you have out, whether positive or maybe not so positive. When somebody says the word millennial, what comes to mind? And again, I'm going to go silent for about a minute to let some of these answers come in. And again, thank you for participating. I'm going to read you some of the words. We have some things that say tech savvy. A lot of people wrote saying millennials, they think of them as tech savvy. I have multitaskers. I have entitled. I have self-centered. I have our future leaders. I have tech focus, again, that tech savvy. Eager, procrastinators, energetic, outstanding, demanding. There's a really great mix here of some positive things and some not so positive things. And when we think about, again, any generation, there's always that bit of negative characteristics and some of the positive characteristics. I would say this probably falls a little bit more on the negative end, but our generation is so talked about and really researched that this doesn't surprise me that many people don't have the greatest words to describe the millennial. We really are one of the most heavily labeled generations. So now that we took your words, some of the words that came to mind when you thought about a millennial, let's take a look at some other words that many people think of when they think of a millennial. And many people said these words. So again, during the research and the data, these 4 words came up the most. People believe that millennials have a lack of respect for authority. They feel that they are highly self-centered, extremely lazy, and have unrealistic expectations. And again, when I think of a millennial, I like to think positively, but unfortunately, I understand where these are coming from. I see why the world sometimes labels millennials with these negative characteristics. If we can attempt to look past these misconceptions and really try to understand where these labels are coming from, we are able to better understand the millennials and really start to see them in a different light. Where many people see a lack of respect for authority, the reality is we were taught from a very, very young age to question everything. When we did not understand something, were encouraged to find the answer. Keep asking those questions. Keep digging to find out why you're doing something. We're really not questioning authority. However, we're making sure we fully understand what is being asked of us or the purpose behind what we are doing. When we think about that look where it comes off as a lack of respect for authority, when the reality is they're taught to question everything, I think that these are people you want to surround yourself with. People who do not just accept things as they are at face value, but want to further understand and really dig into that. And I think that's a great quality. Many also believe that millennials are self-centered. Now, I'd be lying if I said we have our self-centered moments like anybody else, but millennials really value individuality. We really value the idea of being unique. Research has proven that millennials actually are one of the most collaborative generations and work very well with others. From a very young age, millennials are always put into groups, into teams, where they must work with other people to be successful. However, in this team process, when they're constantly working with other people, they want to make sure that they don't lose themselves. We want to make sure that our opinions are being brought to everything. This is how our generation really puts our stamp on things. We're trying to continually do things differently and make sure our opinions and thoughts are heard. So the next time it feels as though a millennial may be focusing highly on themselves, try not to lose sight that they are bringing a unique opinion, a different way of looking at something, and really making sure that they stay true to who they are. Now, one of the bigger misconceptions or labels about the millennials is that they are lazy. Yet I really feel that this couldn't be further from the truth. When we're asked to do something, we are constantly looking for the most efficient way to accomplish it. This often appears as if we are unwilling to get up and go do the task. The reality is millennials are constantly searching for different ways of doing things. They want it to be quick and they want it to be efficient. A lot of times millennials can do all of this without ever having to leave their desk. So maybe as a manager, when you see the millennial looking as if they're unwilling to get up and do something, they may be able to be so successful sitting where they are and doing something efficiently that they don't have to leave their desk. Millennials really aren't lazy, they're just multitaskers. They're not ignoring you, they're not trying to ignore you, they're really just trying to be efficient. And I think that's an extremely important thing to keep in mind. The next thing is unrealistic expectations. People believe that millennials are trying to do too much. As millennials who are taught to question everything and always trying to think outside of the box, we're really trying to reach for the stars. We want to be contributing members of society and add to the workforce and add to the world the way that past generations have. If we think about this idea that millennials are constantly trying to contribute to the workforce, the next statistic makes a lot of sense. 30% of all college students have started a business. So we're talking here about the millennial college students. 30% of them have started a business in college. Now, if millennials had unrealistic expectations of things, this number wouldn't be possible. They are creating these businesses with an idea. And instead of being unrealistic about it, they're just trying to solve the problem. Millennials are really trying to create business ventures, and we're evolving into a generation of really go-getters and entrepreneurs who won't stop at anything to contribute. With those 4 characteristics that we just went over, again, I want to emphasize that I'm not labeling anybody in the millennial. You may have a millennial that unfortunately may be a bit self-centered, and I'm not discrediting that. But it's important to try and look past the obvious. Try and look deeper past the surface of when we see one thing, what is the reality of that situation? I'm going to really try and keep an eye out for these things. The next time you see your millennial sitting at their desk, possibly looking bored and maybe playing on their phone, asking them what are they up to, understanding what they're trying to accomplish on their phone. And I bet you would be truly surprised by some of what they have to say. Now that we spent some time better understanding the millennials, it's important to fully understand them in the workplace. That's why we're here today. We're trying to find that organizational success. So how do we go about doing that? Well, if we look at them in the workplace, we see some facts. Millennials are motivated by meaningful work. One of the most important things I cannot reiterate enough is millennials are motivated by meaningful work. And I repeat that because this is truly what drives the millennial. They want to contribute, as I continue to say, and they want to know that what you are asking them to do benefits the greater good. They want to be able to be doing something that means something. They're not the generation to be sitting there saying, yes, I will do that for you. Yes, I will do that for you. They will say, yes, but why am I doing this? And a lot of times, a simple explanation of how this leads to the greater good will help the millennial find success in whatever task you ask them to do. Millennials are interested in collaborating at all levels of the organization. As I mentioned earlier, we are a highly collaborative generation. We're really looking to collaborate with all members of our company and not just our peers. Millennials really are not intimidated by somebody's status or their title. They're not affected if they're talking to the CEO or if they're just talking to a peer or if they're talking to a director. For them, the title doesn't mean much. They're really just open to the opportunity to talk to anybody that they can. When you think about millennials and you think about where they see themselves and how you help them find success, Remember that it's not about a status or a title. They're really just looking for opportunities to collaborate regardless of where you stand in the company. They value your experience and they value your opinions, but it doesn't matter what the name is on the door. So when we're thinking about this, let's try and remember to speak with your millennial. No matter what your position is, really try and have an open conversation with them, and they will learn so much from you. One of the most well-known things about the millennials, and something that everybody kept repeating when I asked what words come to mind, well, that's number 3 right here. They are tech savvy. And I know everybody on the other line is, tell me something I don't know. Millennials are tech savvy. This is one of the most obvious facts about millennials. From day one, we have grown up with technology being such an important part of our lives. From any question we have, from any idea, everything in our day-to-day involves technology. We are the generation who posts pictures of our food, of our work, of our dogs. Everything we're doing, we want it to be out there. It's because we value technology. We know how much it brings. When we go to a table, to a dinner with our peers, we no longer need credit cards. We can pay with our phones. And all of these things are how we live our lives. With that being said, when we think about the workplace, millennials really expect to be able to utilize technologies in all aspects of the job. A lot of times for people in past generations, it's frustrating idea of asking your millennial to step away from their phone and put it down. And I struggle with that myself when you're in a meeting and you're asking people not to stare at their phone but to have a conversation. But it's important to remember that if they can utilize technology in various aspects of their job, they're more willing to then have a conversation. And it makes more sense to them to be able to use technology to accomplish everything. Growing up with technology, millennials are a generation that are so used to change. People believe that millennials are so closed off to change when the reality is we are so open to it. With technology, every day when you turn on your phone, there's a new update, there's a new app, something new and changing, something that helps us to improve, and that's why millennials are so open to change. If we look back at number 1 here, millennials are motivated by meaningful work. Well, in order to really contribute and do something that means something, you often have to remain flexible. And millennials truly are flexible, and they're open to change, and they're ready for it. More about the millennials in the workplace are millennials are hungry for knowledge. We are one of the most educated generations to this point. We have gone through tons of education, not because we have to, which is a part of it, but because we are so hungry for knowledge. We really are constantly looking to learn something new and to always remain open to learn from our peers, as well as people in past generations. We understand that in order to contribute, in order to be the best that we can be, we must really learn, be open to knowledge no matter where it comes from. As a generation that has answers at our fingertips, whether we are Googling a question or texting a friend, we have always known the instant gratification. In the workplace, millennials are looking for this constant feedback from their managers. The feedback that they're looking for is really feedback to let them know that they're on the right path, that they're doing good work. As I mentioned in the beginning, millennials face a really great amount of confusion and frustration in the workplace, and the feedback helps to ease the worry of not doing things right. When an opportunity presents itself to offer feedback to your millennial, do so. It will really be beneficial to both parties. Unfortunately, when we say they're looking for constant feedback, the idea that millennials are needy pops up. And in some ways, millennials tend to be a bit needier. With that confusion and frustration of not really knowing their place, they're searching for it. They need it. They want somebody to really help them and guide them. In the beginning, if it appears that they are a bit needy, offer as much guidance and support as you can so that they can work independently from that point forward. Similarly, with receiving feedback, millennials are dependent on recognition. We're not looking to be recognized by the whole company or to be promoted. We're really looking to have our manager recognize the work we put in, again, which helps us to continue to feel as though we are contributing. This recognition does not have to be an award or anything of that means. It's just another conversation. Millennials have grown up in a time where whether you are in first place or the last person to finish the race, you receive a trophy. And a bit of that is coming into the workplace with us, that recognition. Not always that you're the best and you're the brightest, but simply that you finished the race and you're doing well. And finally, where past generations have sought titles and monetary gains, millennials are looking for balance. Now, the other day I had a conversation with a peer of mine who's been in the workplace for about 4 years, and he's also a millennial. And he couldn't find the words for it, but when I said the word balance, he said it all made sense to him. Millennials are not looking for that title. They don't need to be the top of the company. They need to be doing good work, but they also need to be able to have balance. They really value their work life and what their work provides, doing something well, being able to pay the bills, interacting with people, but on the same note, they really value their social lives. And when I say social lives, I don't want you to mistake it as they simply want to go out with their friends, but they value their personal time. They value their family time. And they're really trying to work hard to make sure that neither their work life or their social life tips the scale. They're trying to find that balance. So I'm going to ask you again to give some input. What data point surprises you the most? Out of the other things I was just talking about, I'm going to go back for a minute so everybody can see these things. Knowledge, constant feedback, recognition, work and life balance, meaningful work, collaborating, tech savvy, and open to change. Out of those 8 facts, which data point surprises you the most? I'm going to give you a minute to answer this, and we'll come back together. When I ask what data point surprises you, if none of them surprised you, please share that with me as well so I can gauge where everybody's at. All right, so when I'm looking at this, Many people are not surprised by these facts, and that's great to hear. That shows that the millennials might be a little more verbal about what they need or the way that they are. What people are telling me is the thing that surprises them the most is that millennials are open to change. While I understand why that may feel surprising to people, a generation that seems so self-centered and thinking of themselves, how can they be open to anybody else? But again, millennials really grew up in a place and a time where nothing was consistent. Things were constantly changing and upgrading. Being so technologically savvy and always thinking about technology and everything that it involves, we must be open to change. In a generation that is so educated, a lot of change happens day to day in a classroom or the experience that we have in internships. So for those who are really surprised by millennials are unable to change or don't believe that they are, try and take note of this. Try and watch some of your millennials. Have conversations with your millennials about how open to change they are. And I think it might be surprising to you. One of the most obvious data points that we discussed was that millennials are tech savvy. It's so obvious, again, to everybody. But I think an interesting point here is that although statistics show that we are tech savvy, a surprising 51% prefer to speak in person. And only 9% of millennials prefer to be contacted by phone for business purposes. This is a huge takeaway from today. 51% prefer to speak in person. The generation that uses their phones for everything and knows email better than anybody, they actually want to talk to somebody. They want to have face-to-face recognition and conversation and feedback. When we think about those things that we talked about earlier, well, in order to have feedback and be recognized, you must have a conversation with somebody. The next time you're thinking of contacting a millennial, take a minute to step into their office. Ask them to step into your office and have that face-to-face conversation with them. When we can better understand how somebody communicates, we're really given a key to helping all parties achieve success. So this little tidbit here of 51% prefer to speak in person, this is some insight that I hope you can take away. If you can understand how they communicate, your interactions will go a lot better. Now that we have had a better understanding of the millennials, we talked about what drives them, who they are, let's take a look at ways to manage them. It's important, as with any employee-manager relationship, finding balance in all things is key. In particular, look to strike the balance between positivity and authenticity. Being positive in the workplace is something that helps everybody be successful. But with millennials in general who are trying to find their place, that positivity really helps them stay on track. But millennials also want that authenticity. They don't want to be babied, and they don't want somebody pretending that things are one way. They often see through it, as many of us do, that we're looking to have real conversations and nothing that feels fake. So remember to try and balance that real positivity that you feel, as well as always remaining authentic. As we spoke about earlier, it's crucial for millennials to see the meaning of what they're asked to do. Now, somebody chatted with me and said, well, yeah, everybody in the workplace wants to be doing something that has a meaning. And while that is completely true, I agree with you 100%, millennials in particular need that meaning to go on. Past generations often have been more okay with sitting in the workplace, doing some tasks that they don't fully see the connection, but continuing with their work, hoping to get that promotion, hoping to have a better title. Whereas millennials, if they don't see that meaning, in many ways, they're out. They're not willing to go on. So I just wanted to address that chat because I thought that that was a very valid point. And thank you to whoever wrote that in. So when we're looking here at linked tasks clearly with purpose and meaning, it goes back to what we spoke about. As a manager, it's important to help whoever you're managing see the outcome. Why are they doing what they're doing, and how does it add to the greater good of the company? Millennials are really preoccupied with the why. If we can help them see the why, it's often really helpful to them. When I first entered the workplace, my manager did an extremely great job of allowing me to sit in on phone calls when appropriate and listening to things. This really helped me see what was the final outcome. Why was I doing what I was doing? The next one is a bit of a controversial idea. Discuss flexible work options. 77% of millennials say that flexible work hours are a key to boosting their productivity. By allowing your millennial to have more control over their work hours and when they need to be in the office, they will continue to find an efficient method of accomplishing work to be very productive. Although this feels like it might require more management, it is a powerful tool to engage your millennial. Again, millennials are always trying to be efficient, and we don't always feel that sitting at our desk 9 to 5 accomplishes that. A lot of times we feel as though if we can do something in different hours than the normal person, but we're still getting the task done, why are we not allowed to do that? So continuing with the managing the millennial, narrate what and how you work when it is appropriate. So as I mentioned, my manager did such a great job of allowing me to sit in. When she had an important meeting that was an appropriate time for me to sit in quietly, I was able to start to understand better dynamics, understand what my company does, how my manager interacts with clients. And this was some of the best experience I could have ever had. The frustration of feeling unprepared in the workforce can stand in the way of success. So as a manager, when you take the time to explain to them what you are doing, and they're able to see the full picture of the work that they are doing, it is really helpful to them. Aside from just learning the business, my manager offered me a collaborative approach to working. It was made clear that the only way we would accomplish what we needed to was by working together and sharing ideas and thoughts. It was really important that I was able to throw ideas at somebody who has more experience and more knowledge than me and not feel as though my ideas were useless. It was a really great collaborative way of helping me learn and gain more experience. When you are open to collaborating with a millennial, they'll really feel valued, and they'll feel comfortable speaking up and helping you solve a problem that you might not know that they could help with. Millennials are sometimes so focused on being efficient that we tend to rush through things. It's important for managers to help support us in making sure that while we are being efficient, we always remain effective. And that's a really, really important thing, is we tend to rush and be quick with all of our technology. Sometimes we may need help being slowed down. Like, take a step back, see the bigger picture, think strategically. So when we learned a bit more about the millennial, who they are, what drives them, thinking of ways that we could better manage them, let's look at some tips. I encourage you to challenge the millennials to stretch their thinking. It's important to help the millennial realize that they don't have all the experience that you do. that there is still a lot to learn. So sometimes when the millennials feel a bit closed-minded, I really encourage you to stretch their thinking. Discuss things with them. Have open and honest conversations with your millennial. Allow them time to speak with you, ask you questions. How did you get to where you are? What can I do to better help the company? Sometimes it's a 5-minute conversation that really helps put people in the proper mindset to be successful. Also, work with your millennial to find the most efficient way to be successful. Past generations did things one way, and the millennials are coming in trying to do things a whole new way. And at times that's frustrating for other generations. Why can't the millennials do things the normal way, the traditional way? So again, this might involve an open conversation about how both of you can be successful, how the relationship can be successful. And always remain open to ideas and opinions of your millennial, and encourage them in the same note to be open to ideas from you. I hope these tips, although some seem a bit obvious, help you to think about your millennial differently. We're faced with a very unique situation in today's workplace. For the first time, there are 4 generations working together. While today we talked about millennials and their managers, we must recognize that all 4 generations must work together successfully to find success for their organization. We have the traditionalist, the baby boomer, Generation X, and of course the millennial. Each generation grew up in a different time with a different belief system. What's important to understand here is the characteristics attached to each generation are mostly because of what was happening in the world during their childhood. That is what had such a significant impact on who they are and what they are becoming and what drives them. If we look at the characteristics of the oldest generation in the workplace with the most experience, the traditionalists, they are disciplined, self-sacrificing, and cautious. If we skip the baby boomers for a moment and go back to Generation X, they also are cautious, skeptical, and self-reliant. So we see a connection between the traditionalists and 2 generations below them as Generation X. For many who fall into the Generation X category, their parents are traditionalists. So that's how some of those beliefs got passed down. And same when we look at the baby boomers and the millennials. Both very optimistic. The baby boomers are driven and team-oriented, where the millennials are also team-oriented with being collaborative and forward-thinking. Instead of fighting or resisting the differences that we see here, it's imperative to be open to the differences, because that is where our various experience comes from. This is where the knowledge is shared and opinions come from. It's extremely important to understand that the traditionalists, they hold the experience and the knowledge. If that generation is closed off to sharing their knowledge, having conversations with the generation below it, we lose a lot of experience. We lose a lot of knowledge. It's so important that all generations talk to one another. They all share their opinions. They're not closed off to the idea of they won't understand, they lived in a different time. Well, help somebody from a different generation understand. It's really, really important to appreciate the differences as well as the similarities. Finally, for real intergenerational communication, these 3 things need to happen. We have to first listen. Listen to different perspectives and needs, maintain awareness of any biases that might be preventing us from receiving our true message, and release it. Try and listen to other people. Also learn. Once we listen to people, take in what they're saying. Try and learn from them. If I can encourage you to do what the millennials do, ask questions, challenge things. Don't let something just happen because somebody said so. Do I need to ask a question? Does this make sense to me? Can I contribute with this knowledge? And finally, once we listen and learn, we really will grow. As generations as a whole, we must truly work together. One generation is not going to be able to be successful without the help of the other three. Today, I really, really hope that I gave you some better insight into the millennial. That as a group, some of our conversation that we were able to have through polls helped to open your mind to the newest generation, to think about things in a different way. Consider all generations in the workplace. So, as our final, by 2030, 75% of all U.S. workers are predicted to be millennials. While that number may appear to be slightly scary to some of us, we have 15 years to get on board before 75% of all U.S. workers are predicted to be millennials. For some, by 2030, they will no longer be in the workplace. But don't forget to share all of your knowledge and experience with the millennials, who will be a large part of the workforce. I would like everybody to write down in front of them, take a minute to think about this, create an action plan. I plan on leading and supporting my millennial by committing to the following actions. If anybody would be willing to share what their action plan is, please feel free to chat. I would love to be able to share that with the group. So some people are saying here that I'm planning on having an open conversation and listening to ideas. Other people are saying I plan to have more face-to-face time. And again, this is something that many of us were not expecting to hear about millennials, but a face-to-face conversation can really go a long way. Explaining the why and slowing them down. Like I mentioned in the beginning, our generation needs a lot of help. We are flawed and we are excited, but we really, really need the support of our managers to help us. So please, slow your millennial down when needed. Have regular chats about what they're doing, what they're thinking. And then some people said, I'm just willing to accept the different workplace generations. All of these that you have chatted in and shared with me are great action plans. I really, really hope that you took something away from today. I learned a lot from you guys, and I really appreciate the time that we spent. Finally, work for someone who believes in you, because when they believe in you, they will invest in you. Marissa Mayer, the CEO of Yahoo. Be that person who believes in the millennial, believe in somebody, and I promise you that they will invest in you. Pinnacle Group is doing so much work with emerging professionals in different generations in the workplace. I would love to hear from you. Again, my name is Emily Williams. My information is below. Please call us today if you have any questions, if we can help your organization in any way. Sarah, I'm going to pass it back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you. Yep, that was so great. We do have some time for some questions, so attendees, just go ahead, submit those my way now. And while we wait for some of those questions to filter in, let me just share one more way you can gain a little bit more knowledge about today's topic. The multi-generational workplace assessment can help you gain a better understanding of the 4 generations that make up the current workforce and how their unique experiences and expectations impact their view of the workplace. And then for a limited time, we're we're offering a 40% off on this assessment, and go ahead and use that coupon code that you receive in your email, and that will be good until the 28th of October. So we do have a number of questions rolling in, so I'm just going to go ahead and get that started. The first one is coming from Maria. Is the current group of young professionals different than young professionals coming into the workplace in the previous generations?
Oh, that is a great question, and one that we receive a lot. So, like any generation entering the workforce, we're optimistic, we're excited, we have all of these ideas. And past generations are judging us the way that it has happened with the baby boomers and Generation X. So there is tons of similarities between any generation entering the workforce. I'm sitting here super excited about the millennials, but I know that when the next generation comes in, I'm going to be a bit hesitant. So while there are similarities, the millennials are different in just the way that they challenge a bit more of authority in that way that we talked about. So not actually challenging the authority, but not really being okay with just sitting back and letting things happen. Past generations would work 9 to 5 and be okay sitting there, where this new generation in the workplace is not just going to sit back. They don't want to work those traditional hours. They're really trying to change some things. So I hope that answered your question a bit of why we are a little bit different, but again, similar.
All right, thank you. Our next question is coming from Tina. What are the biggest communication challenges of the emerging professional, and how can I successfully communicate with them?
So, you know, and I find this in my own generation when I'm speaking to my peers, I often need them to put down their phone. Please look up at me, because we're such multitaskers. So when you're communicating with them, a lot of it is really honesty. You know, excuse me, I need you to put down your phone. I understand that you are listening to me, but I need your full attention. Or these face-to-face conversations. I was very excited when people wrote that their action plan was going to be to sit down and have an open conversation with the millennial. So a lot of it is just really conversing and not texting them and not emailing them the way that we think that's all that they want.
All right, great, thank you. And I think we probably have time for just one more question, and that one is coming from Laura. As a manager, how can I prevent the emerging professionals that report to me from becoming bored?
So millennials tend to be bored. And unfortunately, back to that thing that I mentioned earlier about thinking that they're needy. So people think that millennials need so much attention and have to be constantly entertained. Well, I just encourage you to think outside of the box a bit. In my office, we have been doing a really great thing with coloring books, adult coloring books. And don't get me wrong, this is a very, very professional workplace, but it allows for that creativity. It allows for the millennials in the workplace, myself included, to be really focused in on the conversation, but thinking creatively, collaborating with my coworkers. So again, I would encourage you to do things like that, but also try and think a little outside of the box of traditional work. Ways of talking to them, brainstorming, having an open conversation where you can throw ideas on the wall on a flip chart to really help get the ideas flowing and to keep them involved. So I would definitely say, too, just try and have these conversations, keep them involved, help them see the greater picture, and they will invest and truly not be bored.
All right, great. Those are some awesome questions. If we did not get time to answer questions, which I know we did not, there were a ton of them, you will receive an email response probably like mid-next week with Emily's answers. So, Emily, would you just like to add any final thoughts before I go ahead and wrap up the session then for today?
Sure. I just truly want to thank everybody for joining me today. I love this topic. I hope it was helpful, and I appreciate all of the chats and feedback. So I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you, Sarah.
All right, great. Thank you so much again, Emily. And a big thanks to our sponsors, the Team Adventure Series. And if your organization is interested in sponsoring an HRDQ-U webinar, you can go ahead and reach out to me at schaefer@hrdq.com. Give your brand a boost and exposure through sponsorship. So we do appreciate your time, and we hope you found today's webinar informative. Thank you.